Hallo, ek is Eti. Welkom by my kanaal waar ons als saam doen. In hierdie video kyk ons na die ander baie belangrike skryfteken in die Afrikaanse taal, naamlik die deelteken. Die deelteken. Now this is important to note that the German umlaut looks exactly like the Afrikaans deelteken, but they are not the same. So it's exactly the same two dots, but the function differ completely. In Afrikaans, the deelteken does not change the pronunciation of the letter like the kappie. The kappie in Afrikaans changes the pronunciation, but the deelteken, the two dots above a letter in Afrikaans, does not change the pronunciation of the letter below it. The umlaut in German does change the pronunciation. So it is important, even though it is exactly the same two dots, the function is not the same. In Afrikaans, the function of the deelteken is to indicate a division in the pronunciation between two vowels standing next to each other in a word. Because often in Afrikaans, you have a situation where you have three of the same vowels next to each other in a word, and then it becomes a thing, well, we don't have three E's, for instance. Let's say it's like next to each other. We have two S, which is ear, but we don't have three S next to each other. That's not a vowel, a triple vowel. We don't have that in Afrikaans. So now the question becomes, how do you pronounce that word? Because you see, you've got the three E's and one of them has the dots on top of it. So now the question becomes, what now? What do you do with this situation? So we use the two dots, or the deelteken, which means deel means to divide in Afrikaans. The division sign is what it means. We use the deelteken to separate sounds so that you know in a word which ones you have to pronounce together and which one is apart from the one next to it, so it doesn't form a vowel that's together. Those two must be pronounced separately, the one after the other. So I'm going to explain this more in this video. On the left, you will see the deelteken ear. This is the most common one found in Afrikaans. The e with the two dots on top of it, that is the most common, and we call it the doetjie ear. The doetjie ear. Another important thing to note is that the doetjies doesn't always separate vowels that are the same. So it's not always three E's next to each other and one of them contains a doetjie. Sometimes it does happen in Afrikaans that we have two different vowels, like let's say a E and an I that's next to each other in a word, and one of them has a doetjie or has two doetjies. And then you still separate those two sounds. So the doetjie on anything in Afrikaans is there to indicate separation. Separate those two sounds from each other. That's how you pronounce it. All right, so that being said, I'm going to look at doetjie ear words, and then we'll move on from there. The first word is cliënt. Cliënt. So that's the Afrikaans word for client. Now, if I pronounce it slowly, you'll see there's a separation between the I and the E. You'll pronounce it like kli and then ent. So that doetjies just separates the I and the E from each other, but the pronunciation of those things stays I and e. They stay the way they would have been if they were separate. So it's cliënt, cliënt, if you pronounce it quickly. And then we move on to dieet. So the question there is, why is there no doetjie? I also would love to know, because it would have made sense if they put two doetjies there on the I in dieet. But dieet, the singular form, is the word for diet in Afrikaans. And the singular form, dieet, is pronounced like that. You pronounce the first part with the I, di, and then the word eet. but there is no doetjie. So that one you just have to learn. But the plural, to make it just even worse, the plural has two doetjies. It has a deelteken. So then it is diete. And it just indicates that, ete, that is pronounced together, and the first part, di, is pronounced together. Diete. And I still really can't explain with the knowledge that I have why the first word doesn't have doetjies, but it doesn't. So diete, diete. And then we have patiënt, patiënt, which is a patient. And that is again pasi, and then ent, patiënt. And that is the way to pronounce those words. Learn those words. There are more words like these. This is not exhaustive. I didn't give all of the doetjie ear words. Same for the other letters. There are many more that I didn't include. But learn these words. Learn these words and the exceptions. As I always say in Afrikaans, for every rule there is an exception, or two or three. So learn them. Alright, so still with doetjie ear, which is, as I've mentioned, is the most important doetjie letter in Afrikaans. And you'll see now why it becomes so very important to know which ones has a doetjie and which ones do not. Because some words you can mess it up really badly without the doetjies. So on the left, this is a very important one to know when to use the doetjies. The word hoer, right? Hoer is the Afrikaans word for whore. Without doetjies, that is what it says, hoer. So, mostly, obviously, we do not use that word. That's for special occasions. The one that we do use is hoër. So if you have a high school, it's hoërskool in Afrikaans. High school, hoërskool. If you were to leave out the two doetjies, you then have hoërskool, which would technically mean a school for whores. Which is definitely not what you want to say about a general high school. So this is very important to learn. Learn this one. Do not mess it up. If you look on the right, I've given the example as to how that word changes. And eventually when I do get to the more difficult things in Afrikaans, trappe van vergelijking and so on, I will teach you the finer details and I will explain these things. For now, you do not have to learn. This is what we call trappe van vergelijking, which is like steps of comparison, if you want to translate it directly. Steps, that's directly translated. And it just means you go from the small to the middle to the most intense word. So on the right, you'll see we have hoog, which means high. And then we have hoër, hoër, hoër. And that means higher. And then at the bottom we have hoogste, hoogste, which means highest. So you'll see there in the middle we have hoër. And a lot of trappe van vergelijking, as we call it, the middle one changes to something that has doetjies or sometimes something that has kappies. But I will definitely touch on that in the future. Another trappe van vergelijking word, and again here we have the situation where the middle one has doetjies on the e. So we're looking at vroeg, vroeg, which means early. But then if you move on to earlier, it becomes vroeër, vroeër. That is an important one to learn the exact spelling, because in Afrikaans, even Afrikaans speaking people, even after they've been in school for 12 years, and that includes me, we get to a point where we forget how to spell vroeër and we start asking, is it 2 E's or 3 E's? Because we do have words like this that contains 3 E's. And we could become confused. Is it like 2? Is it like 3? And also then, where do we put the doetjies? So learn the spelling. It will help you out a lot. Right, so vroeër. Vroeër. That's the division between the V-R-O-E, that O-E, that is the O sound in Afrikaans. So that word is divided into vroe and then vroeër. And it becomes vroeër, vroeër, vroeër. And if you pronounce it quickly, vroeër. And that means earlier. And then vroegste. Vroegste. That is just earliest. The last doetjie e before we move on is moeg. Moeg, which is tired. And then if you move to the middle, it's more tired. And that is moer. Moer. Again, that's the one you have to learn. It's got 2 E's, 1 O, and it's divided into moe and then Moe, moe, and that becomes moer. And then if you really pronounce it quickly, it's moer, moer. So learn that one as well. And then moegste just means most tired. Doetjie e, doetjie e. Okay, so the separation is just on the I now. You just separate whatever's before it from the I, and I'll show you now how to pronounce that. We have some words that we use quite often, and it has the doetjie e. There are words that we use almost never that has a doetjie e, and for the most part, most of us don't even know those words because they're either very old or like very rarely used because it's just words that's not really in conversation. And then there are doetjies that might be on some of the other vowels that we rarely ever use, if at all. And so I don't know most of them. I know words with doetjie e and then doetjie e. And those are the only ones I ever use. But it also depends on the field that you're in, or whether you're in an academic field, or depending on how much of a pure Afrikaans you speak. Because I grew up in a very, very much 100% bilingual household, I mix a lot of Afrikaans and English. I'm a swim coach. I'm a swim coach. I'm in the creative world, so the words that I use is just never on that academic level. So I should say my Afrikaans is good, but I can be much better. My own Afrikaans for sure can be so much better than it is. So with that said, we're looking at beïndruk. Beïndruk. That's a very important word. We use it a lot. And that's to impressed or to be impressed by someone. So, ek is beïndruk. I am impressed. Or jy het my beïndruk. You impressed me with whatever action. So, beïndruk. Beïndruk. Ek is beïndruk. Jy beïndruk my, beïndruk. That's an important one to know because we do use that very often. And then the one below it is not used very often. It's not used often, but it's also not used like not at all. And that is archaïs. Archaïs. So the I and the A, those are separated by the deelteken. Archa and then is. Archaïs. And that just means archaic. Looking at our last word for this video. And this is one you should learn. Learn all of these spellings and all of the ways to use it. It's very often used. And I think it goes for everyone in any language. So the first one is irriteer. Irriteer. And that means irritate. So that's to irritate somebody. Then we look at the next one, which is the past tense of irriteer. And that's geïrriteer. And now we have the separation between the e and the e. And there's the doetjies on the e. So doetjie e, geïrriteer. And then if you say that quickly, it's geïrriteerd. So learn that one. And that's just the past tense of irritate. So was irritated, or you irritated me in the past. And then the last one is geïrriteerd with a D. Geïrriteerd. Geïrriteerd. And that just means I am now irritated. So is to be irritated. Right, so the other was a verb. This is an adjective. So previous ones, irriteer in the present tense, to irritate in the present tense. Geïrriteer was irritated, past tense, but still a verb. And then now we look at the adjective. I am irritated. Geïrriteerd. And that geïrriteerd, the ge now does not indicate past tense. It is just part of the word, and it's an adjective. So to be irritated. And there again, we have the doetjie e. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so glad that I finally got around to the doetjie letters and previously the copy letters, because I think that's very important in Afrikaans. Although we don't use it in every other word, it's used much less than we use words without copies or without doetjies. It's still very important and plays a very important role in the spelling and the pronunciation of Afrikaans words. So awesome. I'm so glad I got to do this. If you have any questions about the doetjies or even the copies, please leave it in the comment section and I will try my best to answer all of your questions. Have an awesome day and I'll see you in the next video.